Today, the CANEGROWERS Virtual Bus Tour is visiting the Mulgrave Valley farm of the Parisi family in the Cairns region. That thick layer of moleshaw cane trash left in the harvester's wake replenishes the soil. It also suppresses weeds and reduces the risk of erosion when it rains heavily. The Parisi's farm is at the foot of Mount Bellenden Kerr, Queensland's second tallest mountain, which holds the record as Australia's wettest rain gauge. In the World Heritage listed rainforest, more than 8 metres of rain is recorded each year. Sustainable farming here is all about managing runoff, ensuring water that leaves the farm doesn't take with it excess nutrients that could damage the Great Barrier Reef.
Now, the river system here feeds into the Mulgrave River, which is only 1.5% probably of Queensland's catchment areas, but still an important area. It's right smack bang in wet tropics and ground zero as far as I'm concerned. And from that it goes out into the Reef Lagoon. And I'd like to make sure that, well, what we're doing here, we're trying to control our nutrient runoff to those areas, as we don't want the reef to be wrecked.
Len Parisi divides his time between farming and environmental work. He's set aside 7 hectares of retired cane land, planted it with trees, and created a wetland system to filter the runoff. It's one of the biggest environmental projects ever undertaken on a Queensland cane farm.
Looking at our trees that we planted about not quite 3 years ago, you can see they're healthy looking young leaves. Really enjoying this environment here. They got plenty of moisture. Obviously it's reasonable soil for them to grow in, and they've certainly shot away in the last year or so. They must have added 1.5 metres to their height. All these trees will be contributing to extracting nutrients that come down through here, any excess nutrients that might be getting away from our cane fields.
The project started in 2016 when Len teamed up with his local Mulgrave Land Care and Catchment Group to plant 2,000 trees on a block close to the river. 4 years later, there's more than 10,000 trees. This rapidly rising forest includes species from rainforest quandongs and blackbeans to riverine species like lily-pillies and bird-attracting shrubs like bottle-brushes.
But the idea of it was initially for me was to make it like an environmental area where we could probably do something with runoff. When the water gets down to this part of the world, it's probably carrying a nutrient load and sediment load. So I thought, well, we'll put the trees in and that'll slow the water flow down. As a person who's been going to the reef fishing and snorkeling for many, many years, I know what's out at the reef, I know what's at stake. If I can do something towards looking after the reef, I would be quite happy to contribute to that part of the reef's maintenance and cleanliness.
To become established, the trees do require upkeep. Today, Russell from Mulgrave Land Care is taking advantage of some drier weather to spray invasive weeds and grasses around the younger trees. In just a few years, though, the canopy will shade out the weeds.
These are at a stage now where we probably don't have to spray underneath them anymore. The little ones, we don't want them smothered with grass and stuff, so that's why we sort of keep an eye on them. But once they get their heads out above the grass and more sunlight, you'll probably see it a bit further down in the next field of trees where we planted last November. From being overrun with grass, we knocked them on the grass a bit on the head with some careful spraying, and now they really are taking off.
Using trees to filter farm runoff and remove nutrients is one element of this ambitious project. Len has joined forces with Greening Australia, the Australian Government Reef Trust and a generous list of corporate donors to create a wetland treatment system where a combination of physical and biological processes filter the water. It begins with a sediment trap on the upstream side of the block where water draining from cane fields is captured. Fast-moving water can carry a lot of dirt. When it slows as it enters the sediment trap, the suspended dirt falls away.
Here we have a sediment pond. When we initially designed it, we wanted to take some water from the top catchment of runoff from cane paddocks and divert it from the drain, the main drain that feeds down into the other lagoons, into this sediment pond, and hopefully let it sit here for a little while so that we could drop some sediment out of it. Not only going to stop sediment in this pond, we also want to control nutrients that run down to the waterways, which feed our local creek, which feeds the Mulgrave River, which then goes into the Reef Lagoon. So basically we're trying to stop nutrients reaching the Great Barrier Reef. or reduce them to a greater extent.
Downstream of the sediment pond is where the biological cleansing begins, thanks to a dense cover of plant life.
Over to the side we have a swale which was dug all the way down through to the lagoons, and that carries the water. And while it's carrying the water, it's getting filtered through sedges and grasses. It might look a bit wild, but that's the system that takes the nutrients out of it on the way down.
At the end of the Swale is the first of 2 lagoons that water passes through on its way to the Mulgrave River. This one has been designed by wetland engineers and carefully dug to a depth of around 2 metres to reduce disturbance of potentially toxic acid sulphate soil.
This is the lagoon that we designed, well, was designed by Australian Wetlands Consultancy. This is the receiving end of our sediment pond and our swale coming through all that grass. And this is the area hopefully where the nutrients have been sucked up by the sedges and grasses along the way, and trees up the top. So down here is the culmination of our water in our lagoon, prior to it going into the main original lagoon which feeds the Mulgrave River.
As water is filtered, it drains into the Fig Tree Lagoon, a natural billabong connected to the river system. Water testing of the 2 lagoons in the years ahead will hopefully show the system is doing its job. Much of this lower lying part of the farm was once a swamp, and as the lagoon re-establishes, so too does the biodiversity. These spoonbill ibises aren't the only bird flocking here. It's fast becoming a haven for a variety of species, including migratory birds from the Northern Hemisphere.
So far, the person who's in charge of Barrier Reef Bird Conservatory has counted at least 64 species down here, which I think is fantastic. I'm happy to say that the bird life down here has increased. I'm amazed that some of these birds fly all the way from China or Russia and end up on my farm here. I reckon it's fantastic, you know.
Len is also working with his local landcare group to increase biodiversity elsewhere on the farm. Creek banks and farm drains are becoming wildlife corridors as they reduce erosion and further improve the quality of farm runoff.
On our small feeder creeks, we've gone through and Landcare's wanted to reforestate that area. So we've put trees all up our little creeks as well, not only for environmental reasons but also to hold the banks together so we don't have any sediment washing away, so they won't be falling in as much. Another bonus will be that once the trees get well and truly established, they shade out all the guinea grass that grows on the creek banks, and so there'll be less spraying, so less chemical, probably better for the environment.
Farmers here in the Mulgrave Valley have been attracting plenty of attention for their environmental work. Len Parisi is a Smart Cane BMP, or Best Management Practice accredited farmer, and has been recognised as a Reef Champion. In 2019, he received the Prince of Wales Environmental Leadership Reef Sustainability Award.
I accepted that with great honour, and I'm really chuffed about it still, really, and probably one of my most memorable things in my life, being awarded that.
But that's not the end of the story. Len plans to plant thousands more trees over the next 3 years, so the wetland is surrounded by forest.
So really it's just been a learning curve, a lot for me. I like growing cane, but now I like doing my environmental work as well. As custodians of the land, we probably should step up to the plate a bit more and say, okay, we're in charge of this many hectares or acres, and let's see what we can do to improve it and leave it probably in a better shape for future generations, but also help the reef water quality as well if we can.